When we talk about implementing the 7 levers in your business, we often split it down into 2 phases: profit foundation and profit growth. Profit foundation is the first phase, and this is where we create a solid foundation for growth. We do this by first of all performing a health check on your business. This is done, referring back to the 6 C's, using clarify, capture, and calculate. By clarifying, we're establishing what the 7 levers are in your business. We're making sure we know exactly what we're looking at going forward. We're creating a common language and a reference so that we can make sure that we're all talking about the same thing going forward. When we capture, we're capturing the current activities in the business, the current things that we're doing to positively affect the 7 levers in the business. What this also does is creates an awareness of what's going on in each of those 7 levers in the business. It just solidifies the framework and clarifies to everyone what each of the elements in the business is currently doing, how it's doing, and what actions it's taking. And the final step of the health check is to calculate the current values for each of the 7 levers. Again, this creates awareness of the performance of the business, but also it establishes a baseline measurement. It's where we can key off of when we start the profit growth activities. We need to know where we're starting from so we know where we're going. Now, in the profit foundations phase, to truly create a foundation for growth, we need to make sure that everything is stable. So in addition to clarify, capture, and calculate, we also correct. So we're correcting any issues that we found during the first 3 steps to make sure that as we apply new growth activities in the business, they are building on a solid foundation, that they're not putting effort into a leaky bucket, let's say. Once you've created a solid foundation, then you can move on to profit growth. The 2 phases of implementing the 7 levers in your business are profit foundation and profit growth. Profit growth is a second phase, and this is where we get to work applying 10% wins to double your profits through compounding. But in order to perform profit growth and all those extra value add activities, we need to start from a solid foundation. So before attempting to apply 10% wins in your business, you should go through the profit foundation exercise first. Once you've established a solid foundation, then you can step into the create step of the 6 C's, where you create ideas for 10% wins for each of the 7 levers, and you implement them sequentially, one at a time, one lever at a time. You implement 10% wins. Once you completed implementing 10% wins in each of your 7 levers, then you reach cycle, where you cycle back to implement more 10% wins. But you don't just cycle back to create. It's very important to understand that you first of all need to cycle back actually to calculate. So you go back once you've completed implementing the 10% wins for each of the 7 levers and calculate so that you can check on your progress and see how you've done against that baseline measurement that you performed in your health check. If you see any issues with any of the work that you've implemented or any other activities in the business, this is an opportunity then to correct the issues. Specifically, we're looking for sustainability. We want to make sure that the 10% wins that we've implemented will keep giving us that 10% lift without us continually applying extra effort to them. And that way we can be sure that we can build upon them with our next set of 10% wins. So when we've cycled back and calculated to check on our progress and corrected any issues, then we can create a new set of 10% wins. And we can continue this process as many times as we want to keep increasing our profits through the power of the 7 levers and 10% wins. As an introduction to the work we're going to do in this course, I'd like to walk you through Profit Foundation's roadmap and show you the main steps that we carry out when working through the Profit Foundation's phase of implementing the 7 levers in your business. So the first piece of work that we need to do is to get ourselves set up. And to do that, we need to set our frame and set our cadence. Setting our frame means identifying the specific business unit or product line that we're going to focus on. And setting our cadence means setting the time frame that we're going to use for our reporting. So how long we're going to wait between checking our figures. Once we've got this information and we've made these decisions, then we can do the main body of work, which is the health check. And to do this, we're going to use the 6 C's as our checklist, and we are going to clarify, capture, and calculate. For each one of those steps, we're going to use the 7 levers as our focus. So we're going to work through, clarify first what each of the 7 levers is, then capture what we're doing to improve each of the 7 levers currently, and finally calculate the current values for each of the 7 levers. This will give us an idea of the current state of the business. The final step in Profit Foundations is to plug any holes that we find as part of our health check. Again, referring back to the 6 C's, this is the correct step. This is where we identify anything that may be not working quite right, that we spotted as part of clarify, capture, and calculate, and just plug those holes so that we're building a truly solid foundation for growth. Again, we'll work through the 7 levers one at a time, correcting any issues that we found. While we're doing this, what we can do is use the 7 levers canvas as a guide to each step so that we know which lever we're working on, where we're at in the overall process. What we can also do is actually use it to summarize our findings, what we clarified each lever to be, what activities we've captured, what value we calculated for each lever, and if there are any issues that need correcting. So it can be a visual guide for us as we step through.